moment has already passed. You're already in the position most people lose from. Not because you made a dramatic mistake, not because you chose the wrong side, but because your sense of danger, opportunity, and relevance is already distorted, and you're acting on it as if it were accurate. Most people think they're responding to reality. They're not. They're responding to what's loud, what's recent, what's vivid enough to stick in memory. And every decision they make from that point on quietly bleeds leverage. This is how people misjudge risk at work. This is how they panic in negotiations. This is how they chase the wrong threats, defend the wrong positions, and miss exits that were obvious in hindsight. Nothing explodes. No alarms go off. They just keep reallocating attention toward what feels urgent instead of what actually matters. They prepare for rare dangers and ignore common ones. They overreact to anecdotes and underweight patterns. They fight shadows while real pressure builds elsewhere. And the most dangerous part is this. The bias feels like common sense. It feels informed. It feels experienced. It feels like you're being prudent. But every move made from a distorted map compounds quietly. You don't lose all at once. You lose position, one decision at a time, while believing you're being careful. And the first mistake is the one nobody sees coming. This is availability bias, not as a concept, as a control mechanism that redirects your attention away from base reality. As the reason people defend the wrong risks, fear the wrong losses, and prepare for outcomes that almost never happen, while the real ones advance unnoticed. You don't assess danger statistically. You assess it by memory recall. The events you remember fastest start to feel most likely. A dramatic firing, a public failure, a negotiation gone wrong that everyone talks about. These examples crowd out quieter realities that happen every day. At work, one visible layoff makes you act as if the entire organization is collapsing. In business, one viral failure story makes you avoid a strategy that succeeds quietly for thousands of others. In negotiations, one aggressive counterpart convinces you every deal is hostile. Who benefits? Anyone who understands that fear is easier to trigger with stories than with data. It feels harmless because you're being cautious. It costs you because you're preparing for rare outcomes instead of probable ones. And probability doesn't care what you remember. What's discussed feels dangerous. What's silent feels safe. Media, meetings, Slack threads, and social feeds amplify rare events because they're interesting. Meanwhile, common failures receive no attention because they're boring. Your brain mistakes volume for importance. You overprepare for scandals. You underprepare for attrition. You fear public mistakes more than private stagnation. You worry about dramatic exits and ignore slow irrelevance. Who benefits? Systems that profit from attention. People who want you distracted from structural risk. It feels like staying informed. It costs you because you're optimizing for visibility, not survival. Silence is where most damage happens. One story overrides 10 patterns. A colleague gets punished for speaking up once, and suddenly silence feels safer everywhere. A founder gets rich fast, and you ignore the incentives that eliminated the other 99. A relationship fails publicly, and you misjudge what actually caused the collapse. You let specific cases override structural forces. You respond to surface narratives instead of asking who benefited, who absorbed loss, and who controlled timing. Who benefits? Anyone whose incentives stay hidden while you chase explanations that feel emotionally complete. It feels rational because stories feel explanatory. It costs you because incentives operate whether you understand them or not. Patterns don't announce themselves. If you can explain it quickly, you trust it. You default to frameworks you already know, solutions you've seen before, tactics that come to mind without friction, not because they're correct, but because they're accessible. In meetings, familiar metrics dominate discussion. In negotiations, standard concessions feel reasonable. In conflict, obvious responses replace strategic ones. Who benefits? The side that sets the menu of options. It feels efficient. It costs you because ease is not accuracy. A wrong map still feels better than none. You fear public failure more than private erosion. You avoid visible mistakes while tolerating invisible decay. You protect reputation at the cost of position. You defend against dramatic downside while ignoring compounding disadvantage. Who benefits? Anyone willing to trade short-term discomfort for long-term control. It feels prudent. It costs you because slow losses accumulate faster than sudden ones. Decay doesn't trend, it compounds. What's loud feels time-sensitive. You rush decisions because something feels immediate, not because delay is costly. You respond to pressure instead of creating it. You trade optionality for relief. Who benefits? Whoever forced your attention onto the clock. It feels decisive. It costs you because speed favors the trapped. Delay favors the positioned. What you've seen before feels manageable. You underestimate risks you encounter frequently. You normalize danger through exposure. Meanwhile, unfamiliar threats feel catastrophic, even when they're statistically minor. Who benefits? Environments that degrade slowly enough to be tolerated. It feels stable. It costs you because comfort dulls detection. Familiarity is not protection. Most people think risk management is about intelligence. Operators know it's about map accuracy. This isn't about being right. It's about not being cornered. Most people try to understand more. Operators try to see what they're ignoring. Control comes from optionality, not intensity. Speed favors the trapped. Delay favors the positioned. If your attention is being pulled, your leverage already moved. The shift is simple but uncomfortable. Stop asking what feels likely and start asking what actually repeats. Stop reacting to what's vivid and start preparing for what's common. Stop letting stories drive posture, because attention determines posture, and posture determines outcome. Most people at work overreact to what's visible. One tense meeting and they carry it around for months. One public critique and they stop speaking up altogether. They start managing their behavior around avoiding embarrassment instead of building influence. That's the quiet mistake. Because when you do that, you give up initiative. Your silence isn't strategic anymore, right? It's fear-based. You're not choosing restraint. You're just trying not to get hit again. The problem is that workplaces are full of noise. Emotion, ego, posturing, bad days, performative pressure. If you react to every single moment, you end up letting the most chaotic signals shape how you move. A better approach is simpler. Don't react to incidents. React to patterns. One tense meeting doesn't mean anything. One sharp comment doesn't define intent. Wait until behavior repeats. That's where the signal is. And when pressure shows up in a theatrical way, raised voices, public tension, exaggerated stakes, silence can be the strongest response. Not passive silence, deliberate silence. The kind that says, "I'm not playing this game." Being visible doesn't mean you're under threat. Being called out once doesn't mean you need to recalibrate your whole posture. Not every moment requires a response. When you stop overcorrecting, something interesting happens. People start revealing more about themselves. The room adjusts to your pace instead of the other way around. That's where real workplace power comes from. Not from reacting faster, but from reacting less. Most people chase what's talked about. They avoid strategies after hearing one failure. They invest after hearing one success. Timing gets replaced by storytelling. Leverage shifts to those who wait for base rates, not headlines. Information asymmetry favors patience. What to do instead? Separate signal from noise. Demand distributions, not examples. Delay commitment until incentives reveal themselves. Stories sell urgency. Numbers reveal position. Most people react to emotional spikes. One argument defines the relationship. One withdrawal triggers pursuit. One vivid moment rewrites boundaries. This hands leverage to whoever controls emotional tempo. What to do instead? Watch consistency, not intensity. Engage when patterns stabilize. Withdraw when noise increases. Attention is a resource. Spend it deliberately. When deciding, ask different questions than everyone else. What happens most often, not what's most vivid. Who benefits if I treat this as urgent? Is this actually common or just memorable? Don't move on first impressions. Delay until repetition shows up. Stories feel explanatory, but they hide incentives. Incentives explain behavior even when no one is talking. Under heavy noise, silence beats reaction. Doing nothing is often the clearest signal you can send, and if something feels obvious right away, assume it's incomplete. Obvious is usually what's left after complexity gets edited out. These rules don't make decisions faster. They make them harder to manipulate. Most people never correct this bias. They keep refining opinions while acting from distorted maps. They stay reactive, convinced they're informed, slowly losing position without noticing. You don't need better instincts. You need fewer illusions. Leverage isn't built by knowing more stories. It's preserved by ignoring the wrong ones. If you're still watching, thank you for your attention.
Thanks for spending time with us. If this sparked a new way of thinking, hit like and subscribe to keep the ideas flowing. And don't forget, check the description for the links to the original books and resources we used today. We'll see you in the next one.